Hi, I'm Nicholas McGurr, author of The Afterlife and host for Stories in a Cemetery. You can find all my fiction works with themes of the afterlife on nicholasmcgurr.com. That's NICHOLASMCGIRR.com. As a writer, I do research, and that research is more than likely inside a haunted location or a cemetery. Like you, I'm curious about the afterlife, and always looking for a new topic for my next book. I hope you enjoy this episode of my research as much as I did in using it for my fiction works. Let's get into today's story in the cemetery. Hello everybody, this is Nicholas McGurr, author of The Afterlife, hosting Stories in the Cemetery, and if you have listened to episode 1, welcome back. This is episode 2, and today's Story in the Cemetery is from an actual cemetery. So back in 2013, when I was working on that unpublished book of mine, case number 2 was Hatcher Cemetery, and today's story is pretty unique, only because I'm giving some bonus audio that I found while rummaging through some of the files that I had for Hatcher Cemetery. And of course, it'll be in the middle of the segment because you kind of need the preamp a little bit before we get into the actual story. So this was creepy all in itself while I was there. I was the one doing the investigation. I was there with Psychic, and I had a photographer with me. I'm going to pull up my show notes just so I don't miss anything. And of course, if you want the full story, and the actual chapter that I was going to publish, please visit nicholasmcgurr.com. That's NICHOLASMCGIRR.com. So with that, you will find it says Hatcher Cemetery with audio. So I did include the audio that you're about to hear in the same blog post, and it's under the blog tab. So I'm sorry if I did not mention that earlier. But you will see my notes for writing the chapter, the actual chapter, and of course, some super cool pictures. A little bit of automatic writing from the psychic that was with me. And of course, I always show the gravestones and headstones of things that I found while I was there. And if you enjoyed this podcast from last week with Alice Flagg, I'm sure you're going to enjoy this one. But I'm going to ask you one thing is to share, like this podcast so I can continue doing it. I did get a few emails and a couple of messages from people that found me on Facebook, so which is super cool. Oh, and by the way, got to give kudos to my wife, April, who designed the new cover for this podcast. That is an actual picture that she took. She is a photographer and she's in graphic design. And that picture, we were actually looking for Annabelle Lee's grave. Annabelle Lee, yes, the subject of the poem from Edgar Allan Poe, one of my favorites. And that bench and those gravestones next to it were a perfect match for the title, Stories in the Cemetery. So kudos to April. I love you. I can't appreciate you enough. I absolutely love the new cover. Please tell us what you think in the comments. So moving on to Hatcher Cemetery. I'm going to read a little bit of what I wrote in my blog post, only because I think I spent a lot of time on it, and it really explains the background of this story. So if you remember from the last post, there were some rules that the psychic and I created when we were going into this project. And those rules were he would not be given the location and or the backstory of the location once we arrived. Keep in mind, I used to pick him up, and I wouldn't tell him where we were going. I would only tell him what to wear based on the weather or if we were going to be indoors or outdoors. Rule number 2 was I was allowed to record audio, but only for use in research. We broke that rule with this case. The second case in, and we broke a rule already. It was too good, and you're about to hear it here very shortly, why we had to use it. And it was crazy. And the third rule was that his automatic writing could and would be published in a book. Now, the picture for his automatic writing in this isn't really automatic writing. It's a lot of just the notes that he came up with during the drive. And looking at it, I mean, he found a lot of things. And keep in mind, this was from 2013. It was in October. It was chilly outside. But some of the things that he found and that I was able to look through, he puts the word unsettled, He says that several times in the audio that you're going to hear. The word entrapment, the word slave, just a lot of different things coming out of his abilities. So again, those were the rules of what we were about to go into. So I hope I've piqued your curiosity, because I'm sure I have, because there's a lot of good stuff with this. And the chapter itself was more about the story of how we got there, because Hatcher Cemetery in Conway, South Carolina is not exactly on the map. It's not one of those next to a church, got some headstones there, and you can Google map it and go find it. It wasn't one of those. It was more of a word of mouth and do a little bit of research online to try to find this place. It was in the middle of the woods. While driving there, I actually got out of the car because I just felt kind of compelled to get out and start looking. And I knew it was in the woods, so I just dove right in. And I'm getting beat up by thorn bushes and brush and scrapes and cuts all over the place. I think I even may have ripped a piece of clothing. Didn't care. I was going to find the cemetery. So photographer and psychic were in the car. I'm kind of shouting back to them. I can't find anything. And then I found a patch of white flowers that were kind of like they were a beacon. They were telling me to keep going. And you got to remember, this is South Carolina. So if you find flowers and it's all around, a bunch of green brush and whatnot, like it's usually something's going on. That being said, psychic decides he wants to get out of the car and he's going to go find it himself. So they stop the car, and photographer and psychic both get out. And I'm still searching. And all of a sudden I hear him calling me. He found it. He had found the cemetery that we were looking for. So keep in mind, I was already in the woods for a good hour, if not more. Again, that was 5 years ago. I can't recall the exact time frame that I was in there. But once he was in there, like he kind of did his walkthrough, getting the feels, so to speak, getting what he needed to so he can help me out with this project. I got the photographer there shooting some pictures, and all of a sudden she gets pretty emotional. So that being said, it was one of those things where the psychic decided to walk off out of the cemetery. And as I'm watching the photographer get really emotional, like teary-eyed, like just there's graves of kids in there. I could kind of see where she was coming from. Kind of felt it myself. And I heard one of those, you got to get out. You got to get out of this area. It was in my head, get out. And as the psychic was walking away, he was recording. I didn't know that at the time. He gave me the audio later. And some of the things that he said were my clues to keep the research going. So he gave me the recording later, and I'm going to get to what that recording is here in a second. So again, I hope I've piqued your curiosity. This is good stuff. This was a great investigation for me. I was attached to it, but I wasn't emotionally bound the way the photographer and the psychic were. So I'm going to stop right now. We're going to do a sponsor of the week, and I'm going to use my own books as my sponsors, guys. So hopefully, if you're listening to this podcast, I guarantee you will be a fan of my books. I call myself, and I've been called, and that's where I got it from, author of the afterlife for a reason. So this week's sponsor is going to be my tree collection series. It's a 3-book series of novelettes. And novelettes, if you're not familiar with those, it's not a novella. Novellas are a bit longer, but novelettes are a bit on the shorter side. So you're looking at about like 50 to 60 page books, paperback. Each book is about the reincarnation of somebody from Earth, obviously, into a tree, a different type of tree. And the reason why I chose these books for this week's sponsor is because once you hear the audio and there's a little bit of channeling going on, you'll see that I believe in reincarnation. It's really big with me. That being said, each book, they're called the Life Tree, the Umbrella Tree, and the Rhythm Tree. They're each 99 cents on Amazon. The link is in the show notes. If you want autographed copies, I'm glad to ship them out to you. And those are on nicholasmcgurr.com. So from the life tree, the blurb says, no signs of the maker. There's no crash of cymbals as I make my entrance. No muses or orchestrated choir and strings to announce my presence. There's no sign of religion. No sensations of sound or smell. No feelings of remorse, loss, happiness, or fear. There's just me inside this random nothingness. There's no color, nor light, nor darkness. I feel my own presence, but unsure if it exists. I am here, but not. This is not heaven, hell, or any purgatory. This is an afterlife, and I cannot remember how I arrived. So, guys, that's from the life tree. The life tree is actually a story of a suicide who doesn't know that they are truly dead. They are confused. The umbrella tree is about a drunk who died in a train wreck because he is a train wreck, and he has to be an umbrella for a drunk that's still on Earth that has a possibility of dying from alcoholism. And the rhythm tree is about a gentleman from New Orleans who was raised by his voodoo grandmother. He was killed in Hurricane Katrina, and he never knew that the community was truly taking care of him because of the respect to his voodoo grandmother and how she took care of them. So, guys, I hope that kind of sparks something with all of you. And check out those books. They're on Amazon under my name, Nicholas McGirr. Last name spelled McGirr. And that's this week's sponsor. So, guys, I'd like to get into the audio. I've kept you guys waiting long enough. So I'm going to cue up the audio so that you guys can take a listen.
I'm here in the middle of the woods and I'm looking for Thatcher Cemetery. I feel very unsettled. I feel very lost. I feel hidden. I'm also getting the feelings of an Ed. Also, I feel like for some reason I want to keep on hearing big house. I'm very nauseated. I'm unsettlement. I feel entrapped. I feel tobacco. I feel slave. I feel family. I feel very nauseated. I don't know how to describe the feeling. I don't want to say I'm scared, but I don't feel happy. I feel very unsettled. Yep. I get a very scared feeling, like I can't breathe. Oh. I just feel, I keep on getting that feeling of unsettled, and for some reason 1913 is big. Yeah.
Go through all the woods and it's this?
Something just kept on pulling me this way. I don't know what it was. I keep on hearing the voices, and Nick heard it too, saying, "Get out. Go away. You're not welcome." In the backgrounds, I hear dogs, and I hear birds squawking. It's like a heathen warning not to be here. For some reason, I keep on feeling like I'm out of breath. I can't breathe. I feel almost tied down. I feel beaten, neglected. And lots of old secrets. And it's almost like I feel like You need what I have to survive. Very uneasy.
Wow. Did you hear that accent change? Did you hear how some of those things he said at the beginning, he was out of breath? If you listen again, rewind, go back 10 or 15 seconds, whatever your podcatcher will allow you to do, and listen to it again. His accent completely changes. When he sent me all of the audio that he did for this particular case, I sent it back to him and said, "Did you listen to this? Did you actually hear it?" And I don't even recall saying that. I will tell you that this psychic does not have an accent of any kind. He sounds like me, and I'm a northerner. He's an army brat. So he was kind of moved around all over, and he never picked up any particular accent. But there's an accent at the last few seconds of that audio that we just went through. Blew my mind. Could not believe what I was listening to, because that was not him coming through there. Now, here's what I will tell you. I took that information, and as a writer, I decided I'm going to research this further and see what comes out of it. Because every time I do this, there's going to be something that comes out of something weird. And I started finding the clues, guys. I really did. But what I did find was that some of the things that it revealed to me, I had to keep secret. I had to. It's not anything major. There was no rapings or killings or anything of that nature going on. But it was more family business. And as a respectful writer, I had to keep that to myself. So even with the chapter that I wrote, and I posted it in the blog, you can check it out on my website, but I had to keep it a secret and write this chapter respectful to the family, to the Hatcher family. And if they ever get wind of this chapter or this podcast for that matter, I hope that they appreciate that some of the things that I found out about their family and some of the things that they were doing and some of the things that they owned, I hope they'll respect the fact that I'm holding on to their secrets. And they're not necessarily secrets. It's just a matter of, it's their business. And I hope you as a listener can respect the fact that I cannot reveal the things that I found and the clues that I put together. It wasn't written in black and white. I can't even say that. It wasn't, hey, this happened and that happened and this is why. It was a matter of finding the documents and the pictures and the family history and putting all the clues together along with what the psychic said in the recording you just heard. And it all made sense. And I could be completely wrong. There's no lie about that. Whatever it is that I found, I could be completely wrong about. But I don't feel that I am. The fact that I heard "get out" in my own head as I was searching for the cemetery. The fact that the psychic had this channeling happen and was able to record it. One other note, too, and it's in the blog. I just remembered. When the psychic found the cemetery, all of a sudden dogs were howling in the background. Birds were flapping their wings to get out of Dodge. I mean, it was crazy. Like, you could just hear it. So when he was shouting to me and the photographer, that's all you could hear. Were the dogs howling, were the birds flying away, the animals moving around the woods. It was kind of creepy. It was super creepy, to be honest with you, and I thought it was awesome. And I'm sure if you were there and you're a fan of this podcast, you probably would think the exact same thing. But, guys, it is super hard to find. I can't even tell you where it is. We stopped to ask some locals along the way, and they all had a different name for that particular cemetery. And it's a very, very thick accent in that area. And the photographer looked at me and said, "You understood that?" And I said, "Partially. It's down yonder." But at the same time, guys, I couldn't tell you where it is. If you want to look it up and Google it, by all means, go ahead and search for it. It's allegedly haunted. I will tell you that it is absolutely haunted. And check out the rest of the notes in this podcast. Check out the blog for the full chapter that I wrote. You might find some more details that I didn't talk about here. And of course, I'm going to close this off with, please share this. give us a like. Give me a comment or two. I'd love to hear from you. How many haunted cemeteries have you visited? And let's tell some stories in the cemetery. If you got something cool for me to research, guys, these aren't all going to be just my investigations for that unpublished book. There's not many of them, but I felt like this was relevant to talk about next. And I have other topics that I research for my afterlife books. So some topics to look forward to. Playing cards being used as fortune-telling cards and the history of that. Spirit boards or Ouija boards, whichever term you feel comfortable with. How pets can actually see ghosts. If you don't know anything about me as an author, I do have an emotional support animal. He is a dachshund. And yes, I have some stories about him watching certain things that I can't see. I can feel them, but I can't see them. I may even have a podcast episode about some technology that goes a little crazy and wonky. I got some camera stories here from some of the newer technology of cameras, security cameras. And if you follow anything I do on social media, you'll see I've got a friend of mine that's been sending me some videos from her Nest camera on her front porch that I could probably add to that episode. So guys, tell me your thoughts. Let me know what you think of the podcast so far. I'm having a lot of fun doing this. This is what I do best. I tell stories, and I love a good ghost story. So if you got one, I'd love to hear it, and maybe I can turn something into a podcast episode, and you could be a guest if you're an expert. So again, guys, give me a shout out, and I will see you guys in the cemetery next week. Thanks. Thanks so much for listening to today's Story in a Cemetery. Be sure to check out the show notes with pictures and bonus audio sections on nicholasmcgurr.com. As you know, I'm a writer, and now you have another story that inspires me to write my fiction works. Be sure to share this episode on your social media or leave me comments on the Stories in a Cemetery Facebook page. I'll see you next time with another Story in the Cemetery.